given all you could, they want some more. Constantly combating conversations with connoisseurs. Cognac on deck, I'm on the night shift like the Commodore. 64 system outdated, so give this town applause. Them man are dinosaurs, they ain't dictating my future. I love the game, but everybody be rapping like future. Medusa mind state, I turn you to stone. When I shoot a verse that will make you disperse. The shooter turned into the truth a long time ago. They don't wanna respect it, don't want to acknowledge the power shift. Ego, they protect it, but I will flow like electric. I'm gonna set this off, no apology, I move metric. Them man still moving imperial, my tech, cause I'm moving hectic. Now everybody wanna talk about the top four. I'm not no number, but I know I'll be the top scorer. And some brothers just be lying to themselves. So I'm airplane mode out, clutching on the top floor. No competition, competition is none. My composition's no comparison, reversing it wrong. The understated victor stand alone, I stand on my ones. My seconds be the hardest time, my best is still yet to come. It's mine. Overrated artists living off the hype. They got no longevity in the game, they got no stripes. No longer social in person, they live on social media. So social skills are not working because they live for likes. It's all a make-believe world, but they love living in the bubbles. They scrolling and reading all the BS you type. Just for attention, a couple shares or a mention is meaningless, but it's like nobody wanna deal with real life. I spit that real life, say what's on my mind. I will not pander to the climate of the deaf, dumb and blind. Never dumbing down my bars, only realness in the lines. You will only hear the honesty and passion in my rhymes. I'm staying connected cause I perfected my art form. This show I directed, calm and collected, rated, respected, stayed on course and never deflected. Flow like electric, I'm gonna set this off, no apology, I move metric. Yeah man, I'm still moving imperial, my tech cause I'm moving hectic.
Moving hectic. The time is 7:51 p.m.
into the night. The city lights are dancing, slowly falling apart. The shadows causing an outbreak. I'm wishing upon a star. This time I'm feeling stronger, and I know I can do better. The shadows causing an outbreak. I'm turning the light. We're gonna light it up, oh, light it up, ooh, light it up, causing an outbreak. I'm turning the light. We're gonna light it up, oh, light it up, ooh, light it up, causing an outbreak. I'm turning the lights on.
Hi, it's Mark, and it's time to start our live show. And tonight's show is sponsored by Stop Motion Pro Eclipse, which I think was I had that as a sponsor last week, but it's a really awesome program. If you guys need to capture your stop motion animation, if you get the full version, you have full resolution DSLR capabilities. So the quality of the animation that it outputs is pretty much on par with any other program out there. Sometimes people like this one over Dragon Frame. It just depends on people's tastes. I was a beta tester for Stop Motion Pro Eclipse, and so I had some direct input into how it was created. Not much, but a little bit. And I really liked it. So if you guys are interested, check it out at stopmotionstore.com. So let me get this off my screen. And where is my webcam? Let's see. Here we go. Is it working? It's working. Okay. So so welcome everybody. I see we have Coles, who's I guess a new visitor to our live show. So welcome everybody else as well. So Coles is asking, how did it take to get good at stop motion? Well, it took me a long time. Let me put it to you that way. Really, it just takes a lot of persistence and practice, and you gotta really enjoy it. I think the key to getting good at stop motion is actually enjoying it and liking the process. If you don't like the process of doing it, and you don't like working with clay or with puppets and I guess in your case you're making action figure animations. So if you don't like the process of doing it, I think it would take a very long time. But if you stick with it and you do it long enough, you'll get good at it. Just kind of keep chugging away at it and learning from your mistakes and trying to improve. I started out sculpting when I was a real little kid. I was probably about how old was I? I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. So we had, my parents would buy me Play-Doh and some really simple clays and stuff. Adjust my camera a little bit. There we go. So, it's like anything else. It just takes time, patience, a little bit of money because you got to buy stuff. Or not. Action figures, if your parents buy you those, it's probably free for you, but if you want to get good at it, what you're really kind of asking is, like, what do I have to do to where I'm happy with how my work comes out? And I'm just speaking for myself, but I'm never always completely happy with my own work. There's always things I can improve on. I like to learn from others, I like to watch others, how they do things, and pay attention, and sometimes you get inspired, and just seeing what other people are capable of makes things go really well for yourself, because it gives you new insights into what is possible, and you know, it's just the process. It's fun. So sometimes what I've learned over the years is if you try to be perfect in everything, it's actually makes things a little bit worse for yourself, because it's easy to kind of say, well, I need to spend a real lot of time, for example, on this character that I'm doing now. I had to sculpt his head, so I had some orange clay, and I could spend a whole day just trying to perfect this little guy, like make him exactly perfect. You know, every little wrinkle would be exactly, you know, right across in a perfect line, and a perfect line this way, and I can make each little eyeball the perfect roundness, you know, trying to make sure that there's no error in my sculpting, like, you know, what do you want to call it? Like, for example, where's my tool? You know, I can try to make each little eyeball on here. I can measure it to be perfectly exact. I could use here it is, calipers, you know. I can measure it down to like the micron, and I can get some calipers. So I can be like, okay, I'm gonna use my digital calipers here and make sure that's exactly 2 millimeters, you know, or 3 millimeters. Or here's the other thing. I could wait until new software comes out. You know, there's going to be this new software that comes out next year, or a new camera. It's going to be an awesome camera, and I'm going to just wait until, you know, that comes out, and then, oh, it's going to come out, but there's another even better camera coming out in 2 years. You know, so I'm going to wait another year after that one comes out, and then I'm going to start getting into stop motion. You know, there's like traps like that, where you never actually do anything, or you do something, but you get caught in trying to be exact or perfect. So, you know, my advice would be just to like sit down with what you have, whatever camera you have, whatever software you have, whatever materials, or in your case, you know, like action figures that you have, and just sit down and have fun with it, you know. And just do it, and don't worry about being too exact. Now, if you had like a $10 million Hollywood budget, I would say be exact. You know, try and be as good as you could. But it's really, you know, it's not so much a matter of being really good at it. It's just a matter of expressing something you have. Like, you have a story you want to tell, so maybe you have your action figures and you want to tell a story. I would just try and figure out the best way to tell the story. You know, maybe like tell it through your voice acting abilities. Maybe you could sort of, I don't know what figures you have and all, but try and come up with a script and make it fun for others to watch if you want to entertain people, or just make it fun for yourself, and if other people like it, because I mean, there's 7 billion people on the planet, so no matter who you try to impress, chances are you're not going to impress everybody. It's impossible. So some of the things that, you know, you might hear other artists say is, you know, like people that have been around the block and who, like Steven Spielberg or somebody like that, you know, or Nick Park if you're a fan of Aardman, or Will Vinton, or, you know, someone like that. They would probably tell you, you know, just make something that you would enjoy, and sometimes it catches on. So a good example of that would be something like Art Clokey. His character Gumby was something that he had his own views on things, and what he wanted to do was to try and portray that through a green character, a neutral kind of colored character, so there's no possibility of somebody saying like he's a certain human race or anything like that, you know. Like he tried to avoid political stuff because he wanted to get across a moral message, right? So his thing was morality, and that's what he wanted to teach in order to get across. So he created a character, but he didn't know if it was going to actually be popular. He didn't just like have a crystal ball and say, "Oh, this character Gumby is going to be on T-shirts, and it's going to be on mugs, and it's going to be on television everywhere, and it's going to be like a cultural icon or something like that." He didn't know. He just did it the way he wanted to, and he had fun doing it. And he assembled a team, and he believed in it. He kind of had a idea of where he wanted to go with it, and it caught on. So it's like a hit or miss thing. Like you never know if your characters are going to be like seen as good or bad, or your animation is going to be seen as good or bad. I mean, some people like myself, I happen to kind of like stop motion that is jerky sometimes. I mean, it's neat to see a smooth animation, but also that jerkiness. There's something about that I like. I really do. Like the original King Kong or something was really jerky and whatnot, but you could still see the character underneath it, like the personality there from the animator Willis O'Brien. Like it still came through with all the hair that was. If you ever saw the original King Kong from the 1930s, it's like a gorilla, right, climbing the Empire State Building, and you watch it, and like the fur is really jumping around everywhere, and none of the motions are very smooth. So one frame after the next, like my hand can move across this screen pretty smoothly, right? So King Kong would be like, all over the place. But you could really feel the character somehow, like the gestures and stuff, right? So if you're good at gesturing, and Willis O'Brien was a boxer in real life for a while. He was the one who animated King Kong, so he used his experience in boxing to create the motions or the gestures for the King Kong puppet. So you kind of fall back on your experience, and your stuff will be unique to yourself in comparison to everybody else. And that's what is cool about stop motion. Not that you're the same as everybody else, but you have your own unique thing that you do, or style, And so yeah. To make a long story short, although that wasn't a very short story, but so this character here is really a simple character. He doesn't have I don't have a lot of ideas about who this character is right now. So I'm just going to sculpt him. And he's an extra character, so he doesn't play a huge part in this film. He lives in this sort of fantasy land where they have an abundance of apples and stuff, mainly apples. And his role is to kind of be part of a group, So this character I don't need to infuse a lot of personality into this one particular puppet. His whole role is to be part of this group mentality of characters. And they are like a blank slate, sort of, where they can be manipulated by a king who's in power. So they call it like tribalism, You're part of a tribe, and that's part of our psychology. So this story is kind of about that. People are not aware sometimes of that tribal nature, and people in power can really take advantage of that. They don't have a self-awareness of how you can latch on to a certain thing and have all these emotions attached to it. Just like with, for example, sports, you know? My team is the best team. I'm going to root for my team. And that's like the most basic example of tribalism. Oh. So, okay, Colas, no problem. So Ken says, I just wanted to let you know I saw Early Man. I wouldn't call it Aardman's best film, but it's still a fun time. Cool. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet, but I plan to. I want to take my son. I think he might enjoy it. I've been watching a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff from the Tested channel on YouTube. There's a channel called Tested where the guy from Mythbusters, he's actually a really cool guy, and he worked in Hollywood films and stuff. And he went to the UK to sort of video a bunch of that stuff, what was going on at Aardman. And he even interviewed Nick Park at one point. I think my friend Webster went to the UK to actually see like a premiere or an early showing of that or something. I'm not entirely sure, but I saw some pictures of him out there, which is really awesome. And he got to meet Nick Park, I think, too. And it's really exciting, you know. I think that the fact that they're still making clay animation films is great. I mean, I wonder if how the studio is going to move forward in terms of their next films. Is it going to be stop motion, or because for a while they were getting into clay animation, into CG, like there was the Rat film. What was that one called again? You know, they kind of got into CG with Chicken Run, I think. They had their storyboard system or animatic system where they created 3D characters and then put them through their paces. And then after that, they... Oh man, I can't remember the name of that one film they did with the rats. But I think for a while there, like Wolverton Studios, you know, they got into CG for a while, and with their M&M's ads and everything. And I don't really know what Aardman's stance is on that sort of thing, but I think Nick Park and the charm of his stop motion really carries the studio. I think that's what people kind of expect and appreciate most. And it's crazy, you know, oh yeah, Flushed Away, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, Kubo's a good one too. But it's so amazing how I watched Nick Park, his interview with Adam, and Nick Park, the person, is essentially Wallace from Wallace and Gromit. Like, his mannerisms and everything are exactly like Nick Park as the man. You know what I mean? It's just so uncanny how similar they are. It's really neat, you know. I mean, it's just the fact that he can portray a character like that and emote through a stop motion puppet is just amazing to me. To sort of have that character come through a piece of clay. You know what I mean? Like, here's a piece of clay. Let's bring it to life and make it believable. And it really is, you know, it's just completely believable. I mean, all these years that I've kind of been into clay animation, it still impresses me. Oops. Don't really know what I'm doing here. You know, most people think that if you sculpt for a long time, like many years, that that you know what you're doing. That everything you do has some direction to it. That every stroke of the tool is premeditated, so to speak. But every time I start something new, I have no real idea of what's going to happen in the end. It's just like you move your tool around and somehow the clay ends up forming into the character. It's like a scary process for me because it's like, is this going to work? Is this going to look right? I think as an artist, you kind of have to have a little bit of bravery in a way. Arthur Christmas. See, I don't think I've seen that one, actually, from Hardman. I'm gonna have to look that up. I kind of vaguely remember. But that's the thing, right? I mean, I'm into stop motion, so maybe that's because of my bias, you know, I'm not one to remember all that kind of stuff when it comes to CG. It's neat though. I mean, I find a lot of it kind of exciting. Like, there's this new Blender that's coming out, which is a free program for, you know, CG animators, and they've got this thing where you can make environments which are as good looking as something you would see in a Hollywood film, you know, something like a big budgeted film. But software is advancing really nicely, and the amount of power that a filmmaker has nowadays is pretty immense, because like, what was it, like in maybe about the 1995 or so, they had a bunch of CG cartoons on television, and they still do. Like, if you go on the Disney Channel, there's a lot of these like really cheesy looking CG characters and princesses, and, you know, typical Disney themed stories. But you look at what they create, and they have probably a really big team of people creating these things. But let's see how this is here. Make this narrower. So, I mean, you know, you can't really compare one person sitting in front of a program like Blender with a Disney production. But the fact is that what that Disney production has, one person, in theory, could create. Not as well. I mean, you still need like voice actors, and you need a storyteller and everything, but the power to do that is something that anybody can do in their house, as opposed to in a large studio with a huge budget. I mean, Blender is a free program. It's CG. The quality is starting to become almost as good as anything you've seen ever. You know, like, there's artificial... Well, I can go into artificial intelligence again like the last time, but there's stuff that's coming out that, you know, almost eliminates the need for big teams of people to create art. I mean, artificial intelligence is really gonna automate the artistic process, and it's either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But large teams of people in Hollywood studios that are all specialized and have all these different kind of roles in filmmaking are going to be less and less needed as more tools emerge. That's kind of how I'm seeing things right now. But So that brings to mind, sculpting in clay is such a simple thing, and it kind of takes all of that technology, and although we use technology in stop motion, but it kind of puts it on the back burner, and you kind of have this more tactile experience, which some people value, like I kind of value it myself. I'm not sure what I'm doing with these eyes here. But stop motion's fun. So Ken says, I think their best film is Shaun the Sheep. They just take full advantage of the medium to tell the story. Yeah, Shaun the Sheep is really good. And it's not super complicated. A lot of their Shaun the Sheep stuff was, although it's well done, they didn't focus so much on complexity with that, which is nice. I just like a lot of these new films these days, like the Marvel series of films, all this live action stuff. And some of the Star Wars stuff to a degree as well. They focus a lot on complexity and adding as much in a scene and making it louder and louder. Every time you go to the movies, it's like a louder and louder experience, to where your ears kind of ring after you see any kind of a big film. And I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I don't know. Wee Beast says, I enjoyed Early Man. Not quite original, but entertaining. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll still, I don't know. I'm going to see it. I think, you can't really expect every single film to be perfect from Aardman. I think after so many years, is it hard for them to come up with new original stories, and characters and things like that? I think if I worked for Aardman, it would be... I wonder what that experience would be like. On one hand, it's nice. I bet you would learn a lot. On the other hand, I think that the pressures involved in making a film like that, getting things done on time, and there's one interview with Adam from Tested, and he goes to the studio and he's talking to, I believe it's the director of animation, and he seemed very wound up, if I can say. Just the fact, like the director was kind of in this zone where he seemed like he was very rushed and a bit tense, I think there's a lot of pressure involved in his job. So I don't think I'd want that particular job at Aardman. I don't know if I'd actually be good enough to be an animation director. Probably not, actually. So I probably would never even stand a chance of being hired doing something like that. But if I were, I might turn it down. I don't know if I'd like that. Just that kind of pressure, and especially when you're talking about investors and things too. It takes making it as a hobby and kind of puts a fire under your butt. It's like, gotta do this, gotta do that. Gotta think about, the rating system of a movie, and kind of make sure that it's family friendly enough to where they will not reject it. Gotta make sure there's no racy stuff in there. Gotta make sure it's this. Gotta make sure it's that. Gotta test it in front of an audience. Gotta consider changes. Gotta deal with problems regarding your staff. People calling sick, or it just adds a whole new element to making films in comparison to like this. And it's more relaxing to do it this way. But like I say, the trade-off, like when I worked for Gentleman Films or for Webster Culper, the trade-off is just that you do learn a lot, and sometimes the people you meet are just really nice, and make some friends and stuff. So Cola says, what is your favorite part when doing a stop motion film if you had to choose? Probably making the puppets. That's the most fun thing. The thing I like least is doing the animation, because you're really tied down to that particular shot that you're working on, and it's not a bad thing, but it's also, like I was saying with the animation director at Aardman, he seemed really tense. Having a shot turn out good or bad, if you don't get the shot, if you mess up, could be like 4 hours of your day wasted. So that's not always a good thing. Let's see here. Not sure if I like this. But making the puppets, there's not a lot of pressure in that. You just kind of have fun with it. Building the sets is not bad. I like doing that. The designing is kind of cool. The whole process is kind of fun. I'm just going to kind of go in here and detail my character out a little bit. So, Ken Tyler says, personally, I like every part of the filmmaking process. I just like seeing the whole execution of an idea. Yeah. And that's rewarding, too. Like, when you're actually making something, you're making progress, and then you kind of look at your table full of puppets or set pieces and things like that. You're just kind of like, wow, this is really rewarding. It's just, you feel kind of happy to do it. Yeah. All right. This character's face is kind of getting there. I would say this character is a little bit older than the other characters. So he's a little bit more wrinkly. A little bit more angular, I guess, as well. Now my camera is going to only see these from the top down. And so I don't have to really worry about sculpting it and having it look good from any other angles, but I kind of do like to look at it other angles though, just to make sure that the shapes look pretty much, you know, in proportion. Nothing is sticking out really weird, like maybe his brows or something. I might take down his... Or actually, should I build up or should I take down his brows? Build up. So Kola says, I get amazed when they have a camera to the side and speed up the video and while seeing the person moving the character, and you see the character coming alive. Yeah. That's called time-lapse. Time-lapse is just another way of... you can shoot, like, for example, clouds in the sky, or cars on a highway. You know, that's pretty popular on the internet, where people will do that. Alright, so I'm going to give him some little brows here. Something like this. So I don't really know how. Let's see, is my camera focusing? There we go. So you can see roughly the shape of what I'm going for here. And it's a bit different from the original drawings that I've got. So I'm going to probably go on here and narrow his face a little bit, where the cheeks are and stuff, but maybe not too much. I think the angles are kind of good for him. So in general, you know, older characters that you sculpt will have the more carved out look to them. Younger people, like, well, actually, if you were to go look at babies, if you're sculpting like a little baby of any sort of species, because I think even like aliens and whatnot, you know, if you're making like a baby alien or anything like that, you would probably go with more smooth shapes, smooth and rounded. Larger heads are, you know, a big aspect to babies. You know, most of them, no matter what it is, like if it's a cat, if it's a dog, if it's a bird, if it's I think in some cases even a fish. You know, most of the times, any sort of babies in all those areas, they all have big heads. You know, we kind of associate that with newborn, you know, animals and stuff. And let's see. So when you sculpt them, you want to use a lot of round, gradual curves. You don't want to have a lot of angularity to it like this. Females will have rounder features than males, and older people will have more indentations, more wrinkles, you know, of course. Lots of extra details that accent usually their bone structure, muscle structure, things like that. So anytime you sculpt older people, you don't really want to try to make it perfect and smooth. You want to leave the tool marks in there. So if you smooth it out and something looks like it's too perfect, you want to add those marks back in there. So with regards to this guy, what I want to do is kind of make his face a bit longer. So I'm going to take these cheeks down a bit. Still going to make sure I have the angles in there. So when I was designing this character, I was going to change the way his face looked. And I was doing it live on the show, and Ron Cole was like, "No, I like that style, this particular style of character that I was making." So I was like, okay, so this would, be the character that Ron Cole liked, and so I decided to keep it the way it is. But I haven't seen him around the show in a long time. I don't know what he's up to. I know he's been busy, but I don't know what he's getting into where he's kind of less available on the internet, I guess you could say. Don't know if he's wrapped up in his work or his birds. He's got some birds and stuff. It's always fun to see him around here, but alright, so now let me see here. So I don't know if you guys haven't seen it, check out last week's show with Tamarami, also known as Claymara. So I think I don't know how old she is. I think she's maybe in her early 20s. But she had some really wise advice that she gave during the show. With regards to uploading stuff to YouTube and trying to become famous and marketing and all that kind of stuff that goes along with being on the internet with making stop motion films and having fun doing it and kind of getting your stuff out there. And sometimes you get attached to, are you ever happy? Like, for example, if you have a certain number of hits or views or followers, how do you handle that as an artist? So if you guys want to learn about that, last week's show was pretty good. So really nice to have people on that give you new perspectives on stop motion and creating it and everything. So although there were a lot of technical issues last week because I had to reinstall Windows, and so my computer wasn't really set up for doing the live broadcast. It was, but not completely. Ran into some issues, and I think Skype gave us some problems, and there's a problem with the audio. I don't understand why Skype decided to sort of take over my computer's audio and lower the YouTube videos I was playing, the volume, but I guess it does that for the sake of having a clear call. But if you want the caller to listen to a YouTube video, it takes all of the sound and lowers it down really low. But so we had to kind of hang up on each other, watch videos, and then talk again. But I think if you skip to about maybe 15 or so minutes into the show is where everything got smooth, started to work. I hated the fact that when I had a guest on, everything fell apart. And then, I don't have a guest on like tonight, and everything's working really great. But it's a Maramine, so you guys can check out her stuff. Alright, so I don't know, does this character look pretty good to you guys? I guess I don't know about his eyeball here. It looks a little bit strange to me. So it's going to kind of move his eyes up a little bit. Make sure it looks good. Maybe it has to do with the fact that his lower lids are not really, I need to add just a little line there or something. So it looks like they're scrunched. Kind of helps. So this character is going to have some bushy eyebrows. He's going to have the hair and everything. So what time it is? It's got about 15 minutes left. I don't know if we have enough time for that stuff, but I might prepare for making a mold of him. So the next step with this guy, I'm not going to make a huge amount of replacement faces with him, but what I want to do is I want to make a mold and maybe make about, 4 or 5 faces, different expressions. So what I have to make sure that this particular sculpt is where I'm happy with it, because once you make a mold, they're sort of set in stone, and it's like, I don't know. If I make copies of it and then later on I'm like, how come this doesn't look right? You can't really go back. You gotta start all over. So I'm gonna make sure that the cheeks have the angularity to it. Like I was saying. There's kind of like this fine line between making something too angular and too detailed and not enough detail. Maybe extend his head just a little bit more. Make his head a little bit longer. Make sure the outline is nice. Look at this on my screen. I can make his mouth a teeny bit different. He needs to have a little bit of a lip there. A little bit of an upturned lower lip. Wish my camera would focus. Get in focus. That's probably okay. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, so what is next? Next thing to do with this guy is to kind of flatten his head on the paper. Gotta make sure that when I make a mold that the silicone, that he is flat and silicone doesn't just go underneath him, and because there's somewhat of a concave shape there, you notice. The problem with making a mold is if I had this from the side view kind of curved, not straight, I might run into problems, because when I cast it and then put it on glass, if there's any kind of strangeness there, it won't sit flat, and then the next face I put on there might be at an angle or something. I don't want that. It'll look strange. Alright. So, I've got some poster board here. And this is what we'll make the mold with. First I'm going to take my orange clay and put it in this bag to make sure it stays kind of clean, so no dust gets on it. This is sort of a rare clay here. I'm hoping I could get more. I really like it. It's that Avalon clay from 1980s. This is really some ancient good clay. but it's in rare supply, and there's only one person I know who has been selling it, and I don't know if he's going to sell any more anytime. At any time. But I bought some from him. I asked him, hey, do you have any more of that stuff? And he never replied. So let me see here. Let me get one of my tools real quick. So I've got this, which is just a steel ruler. It's got a 90-degree sort of piece on here that you can pop off. But what I want to do with it is I want to cut a strip. Nice straight strip. That's going to make up the walls of this mold. So I've got an X-Acto knife and hopefully this one. Cut cleanly across. Oops. Yeah, I'm going to take the ruler off of here. It's moving around. I'm going to try cutting from this side too. So I don't know, this is probably about an inch wide or so. It's going to go across. This, be very, very careful, obviously. Sometimes instead of pulling it straight across, I kind of do this jerky motion. It gives you a little bit more control when you cut it. The short motions as opposed to one long one. If you keep moving and the knife becomes twisted and you go off your line, sometimes when you go straight across, by the time you notice that you're making a mistake, you've cut it really far. So if you just do it in little short motions, if you screw up, the mistake is less than it was before. Or it would be if you had done it straight across. Anyway. So there's our strip. And what this will do is I'll make a wall around our face. And to do that is pretty easy. So I kind of eyeball it. I'm looking at it from the top down. And I'm going to say it's going to be about this wide here. So I'm going to cut about halfway through this foam piece. Kind of just enough to go through the paper layer, and then I'm going to snap it across. When I snap it across, I just adjust the let's see here. So sometimes when you cut it, it's at a slight angle, and so your piece will be off the center. So just move it up. And it's another width, somewhere about here. So one of the things you can do is you can take a marker, mark it. Take your X-Acto and then do the same thing, cut halfway through. So that one is definitely at an angle. That's alright, I can just bend it. So it's fairly forgiving to do this. And I want to make sure it's at a 90-degree angle. sure straight across from this piece is where I cut this piece. Just going to mark it with the pen. Bend it. And this will be our little box, which fits on our overall character. So when I do fill this up with silicone next week, it's not going to take much. And you want to make sure that when you do this that you're cutting the box to where there's not a lot of distance between the part and the wall. Got maybe, 3/8 of an inch top to bottom. Maybe, 1/4 inch or so on each side, maybe a little bit less. That's what you want to go for. You don't really want to make the box large and use up silicone that you don't need to use up. Silicone can be expensive. I mean, it's kind of depends on. It's like the weather, like if gas prices go up and oil and everything else is more expensive per barrel on the markets. Well, silicone is made from oil, so sometimes the prices go up. I'm just going to cut this off. And the next thing to do is just to make a simple box, or not a box, a simple base that will go underneath this. And I'm not going to use this because this is good foam board. I'm going to use something else. But I might not have any. Oh, I'm out. All right. Kind of this. So what I'm going to use next week to make as a base for this, I'm going to hot glue this to this piece of plexiglass, and I can reuse this plexiglass for making future molds as well. But I am going to clean it. I got some alcohol. I'm just going to kind of clean it up for next week. This is part of another project I worked on, so this has been on the floor. It's gotten kind of dirty and everything. Just to kind of keep my silicone clean when I do pour the mold in here. Kind of make it nice. So put our face on here. And that's going to conclude our show. So anyway, we appreciate you guys coming by, and if you guys have any questions or comments, just leave them below in the video. Alright, see you all next week.